Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. Very excited to have a dear friend of mine, Yuli, who moved from Ukraine as a child, and she's told me lots of stories about what it's like to be in America now after growing up there. So I thought it'd be great to hear from her directly on what's happening in today's society. Hi, Yuli.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I'm so happy to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Ukraine.
Well, going back a little bit, and excuse me if I'll get a little emotional here, but it has been really, really different from anything that I have seen here so far, living here for about 20 years. We, um, we grew up in a small apartment, kind of like projects, something that you see here, maybe down in the state of Pennsylvania. And small rooms, really no much of a hot water situation. I remember stories being baptized in a sink. My grandparents would tell me those stories how I was baptized in our apartment sink. All kinds of things. Twice a week, no lights, no electricity.
Why was that?
So Russia would be the part where the coal would come in, and so they had to regulate how often they would turn on the lights and for how often they would run. So that being said, it would have to be turned off occasionally to kind of make it an economy, basically. So there was a shortage of that. We were wearing a bright brown uniforms to school, white aprons, and a little red scarf around our necks, just kind of, saying to everyone that we are pioneers. And that was part of the Communist Party back in the days. And we would all be called komsomols, and we would do praise the government every morning before the school starts. If you would misbehave in any way or would be late, the teacher was allowed to hit you with a wooden pointer.
Oh, my goodness.
So growing up and being a little bit of a rebel, that was a little bit tough on everyone. Still have some scars here and there.
Yeah, the Yuli I know would not put up with that very well.
No, this has been very different since we moved here, definitely. So growing up in Ukraine was very, very different.
What was the weather like? And just like, did you go outside and play a lot? Did you have friends on the cul-de-sac, as we do here?
So it's all apartment complexes. We're talking about high-rise buildings, about 12 to 16 floors. And then these buildings would surround a playground area with few swings and some slides or whatnot. So, weather permitting, we would be outside playing and hanging out during the summer. Construction job sites were another thing that we could go and play at.
Really?
It was crazy. Winter was really harsh, especially in the early 90s. We're talking about 3-4 feet of snow easily between January, February, and March.
Oh, my goodness. So tell us a little bit about school. What was school like?
School, so I got the first year in the school. So we were going to school when we were 6 or 7 years old. We would go ahead and get enrolled. Uniform was a must. You had to look perfect to the T. The appearance and how you behaved and what you said was strongly controlled by a teacher. You had those break in between when they would take you outside, they would line you up, and we did have that praising of a government thing. We would sing and we would kind of, how would I call it? It's not just a prayer for their success for every day, but it was kind of in that way. You would have to go around and say, you hope that the government succeeds and will take care of us eventually, kind of thing. We had all the subject that regular school has, minus the history or anything that had to do with political science, law, or any kind of legal aspect.
So you did not learn any of that?
No, we were not allowed. That was not available. You would not see that in the books. No.
Why do you think that was? Were they trying to recreate whatever narrative they wanted to?
Possibly. It was hard to think at the age of 7 or 8, what would that be all about? You kind of did not know it's existed. And so everything was about speaking Russian and just kind of the agenda of you are at home, parents are gods, teachers are gods, and the government is the god of the god. And that just kind of was the agenda through the entire school years.
Did your parents talk to you a lot about the history of Ukraine or growing up?
No, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was the one who taught me some of the Ukrainian, and that was really it.
What was the geography there? Were there mountains, beaches? Like, what's Ukraine like?
So We don't have our half island Crimea, as we used to call it, anymore due to all the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine back a few years ago. But so we did had an access to an ocean through Odessa and a Black Sea. We do have some mountains. Mostly, it's just a hill kind of area, so you don't get the pretty view like we have in Colorado.
What do folks do for hobbies there?
Right now, there's all kinds of opportunities. Back in the days, you look into very, very simple things. Basically, spending time with the family on the weekend, just really to the basics. And that one thing when you're kind of a live remote control for your parents, then you go and change the channels, and we all hang out, and that's really is it. And then holidays, definitely having family for the holidays.
Well, you guys do holidays big. I've
we
been
do.
to some of your parties. Tell me a little bit about what holidays were like there. What were the significant holidays?
So I think New Year's Eve and the celebration of the independence of the city and of the Ukraine itself, that's really, really big out there nowadays and before once it became available. But New Year's Eve is a big deal for us. So all the family would gather together. We would have 8 to 12 people in a teeny tiny kitchen. Everyone would be cooking, frying, chopping, and that was really is a bonding time to spend with the family together. And the best part for me, for over the course of many, many years, it was the highlight, the tangerines. So we would be able to have 3 each right before the dinner. Sometimes we had to hunt and look for them in the apartment because parents would hide it here and there. But that was it. If you got those tangerines or oranges, any citrus really, or strawberries, that was just a fancy treat.
Ah,
During the winter season, you knew your family did well for that year. That was a very special treat.
so 3 tangerines or a strawberries were the treat.
Yes. I mean, there's 3 piles of feet of snow outside of the window, and you eating tangerine. You do feel like you're on the beach at least.
Oh, that's neat. What did folks dress like back then, or now? Is it more whatever you want to? I know you had to wear uniforms to school, but were you also able to wear whatever you wanted to outside?
Sure. Again, weather permitting, you did have to be really, really warm and layered up for the winter. There's no questions asked about it. You know what? Piles and piles of snow. You won't see what you see here in the United States when you have that crew coming out and cleaning the streets. You just had to make your way through that pile of snow on the sidewalk, and hopefully you will make it and see which way you're going. But yeah, weather permitting, definitely. Uniform is just what it is. So if you go into school, you're wearing your uniform, you have your tights on, you have to have like a certain layer over that of kind of almost a ski looking pants just to stay warm while you walk into school. There's no bus system. Till today, there's no school bus system. You either walk, you ride a public transportation at an early age, or if your parents are well seen out, they'll take the car and they'll drop you off.
Huh. So, what do you do as far as college? Is college free there? Do you go? Does everybody go or not go?
So it's a choice. And there is a school that kind of like a college. We call it technical university. It's a step down from a college. You can get enrolled there. You can do similar degrees, but it's not as valued as if you would actually graduate from the academy or university or something of a higher level or grade. So back then, everyone's a welcome, but to get in, you kind of had to know a special someone to make sure you get enrolled.
Interesting. And what kind of jobs were popular when you were growing up there? Like, did you have aspirations to do anything particular?
So when I only went to an academy for first year. It was People's Ukrainian Academy that I was enrolled in. It was interpreter and translator kind of job, and that's something that spoke to me. And I've always been encouraged to learn different languages throughout many, many years. And we did eventually move schools for me. And things have changed in Ukraine, obviously, over the course of years. So I was able to attend a school that had English and had German available to me. So both of those languages was learned, and I did pursue the interpreter and translation kind of degree.
How many languages do you speak now?
Fluently 4, the 5th one would be German. I think it's the resilience in me. I always hated it. Never really got to learn it. Can read it, write it, kind of like a dog situation. I understand, but don't really speak it anymore.
Yuli. Great. Yuli, I want to hear what it was like culturally, like being a teenager, being in college. What did you do for fun?
All right. So obviously, we're talking about several years now ahead of time, and this is really different in Ukraine that we're talking about now. There's nightclubs. There is party all the way.
Now there are.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. The restaurants business is blooming. There's so many different things you can go and do. So back in my days, you could easily get into the club when you're 14, 15.
Ah,
There was no ID checking situation going on. They kind of looked at you. You kind of looked old enough to get in, and that was it. That was your ID check at that point. So, being 15, 16, 17 years old in Ukraine, actually, confession, I went to a club first time when I was 14.
oh,
I did not like it, and I had no clue how to dance. So that was a pretty miserable experience. I was probably there for about an hour and a half, and then I took off. So, and then another thing is, it was really weird. It was like 6, 7 p.m., and you get in, and the place is really, really dark, and everyone's dancing, and it looks like it's middle of the night, but it's not. So it was a really different concept. That's where they were starting more and more to have these kind of activities where people would go to those places and have drinks and hang out. Speaking of drinking, the drinking age is 18 in Ukraine, and again, there's no IDs checked. So you come in, you talk to the store person, you pick up whatever you want, you look old enough, off you going in with a bottle of vodka kind of thing. So, and that is still kind of like that nowadays. There's really no enforcement of an age. I mean, you look at the federal laws and you look at them and you read it, and it does say it's 18, but that's really is it.
interesting. And it's probably a more laid back culture about drinking then too, right? Like we hear about Europe where kids aren't, you're not like sneaking off and doing anything really bad.
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of
And
accepted.
it's really accepted, and it's open, and the parents knows, and you start trying things at home, taking a little sip of a beer from dad, or having a little bit of glass of wine with mom, and like right around 12, 13, really.
Huh.
Yeah.
So take a step back to when you moved here. What was that like?
Oh, very, very dramatic.
Oh.
I spoke quite a bit of English by then, and doing my being in my first year of academy, so we've learned English. I kind of knew how to get around and get in, um, make some friends, but it was really, really traumatic because we were traveling for about 36 hours, flying into the United States, lots of layovers and stops, getting in here, and just the immigration process and everything like that. It was really, you were looked like you were kind of like a criminal getting in here, even though we had all the documentations coming in and we were coming in on the residency, etc. It was a tough experience.
And how old were you then?
I was 17 when I was coming in here.
So how did you adapt? Like how did you make friends and get kind of used to the culture here?
First thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is my $500 cell phone bill.
Oh,
I was calling and talking to everyone back home. I was staying up at night for hours and hours because there's about 9 hours difference between the two countries. And I would try and hang out and kind of try to keep up for a while to keep my friendship together with everyone else until that slowly melted away. I did went to an English school here, Bridge Linguatech, I believe that's what it was called. And so started making friends there. Actually met my first boyfriend there as well.
how did your mom decide on Colorado?
The decision was kind of tough. We had some friends and family, really, really distant family, I should say, here on my father's line. And kind of was a dying wish of my dad to come over here and live here because they knew that there's a certain support system. We wouldn't be just coming in without having anyone at all.
And so were they helpful when you got here?
In a way, yes. They were an older couple, so they didn't speak much English. They were here on political protection. So it was really kind of a hush-hush situation. We had to figure out a lot of things on our own.
Oh my goodness, that seems scary.
It was. It really was in a way.
So looking back, what do you miss about Ukraine? What comes to mind right off bat?
Definitely what I have mentioned, the evenings was the family and gatherings together. That was just a really, really big part of it. And it was really, really fun. You were allowed to do so many things that you wouldn't do on a regular basis. Parents were drinking a little, so you could sneak a trouble or two in between. So that was definitely something fun. having certain freedom. It's funny to say that, but you could have really, as a child, you could have really gotten anywhere and do anything. I had no problem or worry getting on the bus or trolley bus and getting around the city and going to really any place I wanted to. There was no cell phones. No one was looking for you. You could have got lost for a few days. So
I'm glad you didn't.
me too.
Tell me what you appreciate about America and being here now.
That's an easy answer. Freedom of speech, freedom to be a business owner, freedom to be a woman with all the rights in the world. This is fabulous. This is really is. This is a huge difference. You know, I've been back to Ukraine about a few years back, right before the COVID happened, and I really haven't seen much change for females in any kind of industry. It's still very dominant by males, and being a business owner and a single mom, attending a university and graduating from university here, having my 14 months old sitting on my lap while I'm taking a test, you would never see that back in Ukraine.
So everything has gone awry in Afghanistan over the last week or two. And one of the things that's just been heartbreaking is watching women see their rights just melt away. And I wonder, do you have any ideas on how we can help or how we can connect with the women there and be supportive?
I think the biggest hit would be probably some kind of social media nowadays.
Yeah.
Having and hoping that we can reach out to them and provide them with any kind of help they have. Maybe creating an online university where they can enroll, and even if they have to pull out an iPad or any kind of phone at the end of the night and hide it under the pillow and do some studying and learning, and just have an idea and be aware of what's going on around them and around the world. I think that would make quite a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and it makes us, it shocks us a little bit into how many rights we do have here. And what you're saying is, even in Ukraine, you didn't have that many rights.
No, absolutely not. We definitely get to appreciate what abilities we have here, what freedoms we have here. I mean, we're really able and can do absolutely anything if we would put our mind and heart to it.
Yeah.
So having them and seeing them in that kind of situation, they not even have any choice what they wear the next day, really. It just all went away overnight.
What are you worried about now here with things are socialism is getting a little sexy here. Young people think it's a good solution. They think the government can solve a lot of our problems. What do you say to young people when they ask you about that or talk to you about it?
Take control over your own life, please.
Yay.
This is crazy. My family never used any kind of welfare being in Ukraine. And Eastern Europe and Russia and Ukraine itself have promoted a lot of communism and socialism, etc. The point is, the welfare was never available. You could go into certain places and stay there. You could see the lines driving by the building, and you could stay there for days and hours, and you see these people going in and out and coming back over and over again just to get some kind of government help. If everyone would flood into getting those things because they think it's so widely available, how are they going even to disperse any of this? It's insane. This country is not ready for this. That is for sure. And it really is nothing that you would want to have in your life long term. That was just not available, okay? It was just not really there. So our thing is to work and work and work really, really hard, because that's what allowed us to have at least some kind of control over a situation and our well-being.
No, I think that's beautifully said, Yuli. And I worry that it's so easy these days to slip into the government will take care of it or our politicians will solve that problem, when really America was built on the idea that we as individuals could solve our own problems and make decisions about our lives, our businesses, our families. And I really appreciate you pointing out the stark contrast in Ukraine and here and seeing the opportunity here. That's what I love about it.
I do too. And you know what? Again, going back to being a single mom and a business owner, having an opportunity to actually say, I am a business owner, that is a huge deal. I mean, you really had to know some certain people and know certain ways to get around kind of like different institutions in Ukraine in order to actually owe something. And then you always, on the back of your mind, you have that fear that the government can come in and take anything.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're giving them an opportunity to control things, an opportunity to come in and change things so drastically, you will give them control over your own life and your own choices. There's no questions asked about that.
Yeah, so it might be really nice to have a big check come in the mail, but with that comes the ability for them to take it right
100%.
away
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
take control over your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. 100 times yes.
So, does your mom talk about stories, or like now that she sees what's happening in America, is she worried too? Does she talk about, having an even longer history in Ukraine and seeing what's happening here?
She likes this very, very nice phrase that she repeats very often when I get to see her. She says, "Work hard, be prosper." That really is kind of an idea behind it, or work smart and get prosper. Um, she is in a place and time in life where she wishes none of this would be going on here. It is really, really sad. We practically escaped that kind of lifestyle. And we are coming in here, and we've been here for about 18, 19 years now, and we're seeing this trend happening here. You know, are we back to where we started? Or what's going to happen? Everyone have these questions. Everyone discuss that at home. Everyone wondering what is next for this country.
Well, and I've been to some of your get-togethers with other friends from Ukraine and Russia, and we have some great conversations about this. And it seems like the whole community is very worried about this. How can we give voices to more people who have come from communist or socialist countries to talk about this, to educate our young people and folks that are enjoying these checks coming in the mail, or the government taking more care of us, and the danger of buying into that?
That's a really, really good question. I would have to think really hard before I could answer that. But I think anything that would help to bring those voices out so people could be heard. Maybe another podcast like this.
Yes.
That would be
Yuli, you
wonderful.
should start a podcast.
Maybe I'll think about it. Definitely will consider it now. I mean, it really is getting the word out there, giving tons of different examples. There's people that are still, not using their names, first names, last names. They are here under certain programs trying to still escape the oppression of the government.
Wow.
So just because they voiced their opinion at some point of time, just because they speak out for something that they believed. So we always have to take that in consideration. And if these people are willing to come out nowadays and speak out and give us their point of view, why not to hear them?
That's well said. Well said.
Hi, Yuli. I'm so happy to have you back and being able to talk to you about what's happening in Ukraine, your beautiful home country. We did an interview that everyone probably just watched the last summer about growing up there and what it was like to come to America and the traditions that you love and miss and your family that were there. Tell me a little bit about what's happening right now with your family and friends.
The things have changed quite a bit, and from a very happy and excited times to a very sad and dangerous place that Ukraine have became literally overnight in the last 6-7 days. The family is currently in the bunker, and everyone's hiding, and no one knows what the following day will bring or will look like.
Tell us a little bit about one of your family members or one of the people that you're close to. What are they doing right now?
So I have a half brother and a stepmom in Ukraine, and all her family is there. I have my cousin and her niece that also basically in the process of fleeing Ukraine right now as we speak. And all my classmates, all my friends, and not just my immediate family, but other relatives, extended family as well, that is currently just basically hiding and, counting hours in order to come out and get a breath of fresh air. My cousin and her 2-year-old daughter is right now on a train from Kharkov to Lviv in order to find some kind of rescue, some kind of place to be and feel safe on the border with Poland.
I'm sorry. Okay, people are really confused about what's going on. Can you tell us from your perspective what's happening or why this is going on?
The plain, simple answer is we do not know. There are so many theories, there's so many ideas, there's so many information floating out there. We don't know. And I cannot say that I'm leaning towards one theory or the other, or someone's right or someone's wrong, or we're on one side or the other. But it seems like maybe somewhere, somehow, some person decided that they just want to have a whole USSR back together again. I don't know. I really, really don't know. All I know is people are dying. All I know is my city that I grew up into is destroyed. And all I know is that every day at around 2, 3 a.m. Colorado time, I'm on the phone with my family, making sure that they woke up and that they are okay. And they are, have their food, they have water, they have things that we are enjoying, and don't think that, someone will come over and take it away from us.
Right. Oh, goodness. What happens once they get to Poland? What do they do if they get across the border?
The rumor has it that the local government in Poland has established buses that can take people further, passing the border and further into the country or into the destination of their choosing. And I want to elaborate on that a little more. It's not that they can go anywhere that they want, but there's a certain options that supposedly would be available to these people, including going places to like Bulgaria or maybe Germany or somewhere else. It depends on what's available and who is open to take additional refugees. But there is buses set up in order to kind of disperse these people within the country and get them to another location if needed.
So do they need supplies or money, or how do you organize help for everyone?
We've been thinking really hard the last few days. We are trying to figure out how to set up a fund where people can make donations. We are organizing right now locations where we can accept donations for certain things. We're working on the Instagram page that should help us establish a list of things and that's needed by families that are still remaining in Ukraine, people that need help, and the ones that are across the border in Poland and other places as a refugee, to assist their countries and their places and to help people who still remain in Ukraine.
Okay, got it. What about the elderly in Ukraine?
That is probably the saddest and the hardest part to it. People just refuse to leave their homes. They've lived through World War I, World War II. I'm probably exaggerating on the one, but on the two, definitely. They don't want to leave their home anymore. Right. And this is all they know at this point. This is where their children were born, their grandchildren, everyone. And it is just so hard for someone at this age to get up, make a little suitcase and take off. Where do they go? What do they do? Some of them are alone. Some of them no longer have any family. Some of them don't have anyone to take care of them. Where do they run? What do they run to? So they're basically barricading their homes. They're collecting any help that they can, and they're staying there. In Ukraine, I have a very close friend to me, an older friend. She was my Russian literature teacher at school, and she's alone. Her daughter is in a completely different city. They are torn apart. She doesn't really have anyone else except her students that she taught and stayed in touch with, maybe a handful of friends. And she is there by herself, and we talk every day, and she says, don't create a panic around me. I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. But I know she's alone, and she has nowhere to run.
What about the internet? What's going on there? Is everybody, there's rumors about Elon Musk helping and doing this Starlink thing, but can they communicate fairly well with you right now?
So there is a certain part of the time of the day that the internet and the services are shut down. They do have an access to the phones. They all have cell phones, so we do call and text, but there's parts of the day where there's no service. So it depends, but I think in the last few days we kind of got a hang of when we can reach out to each other and how we can reach out to each other. I know in Ukraine, some of my family members have access to Instagram, and I know it's working for them as of right now. So is the Facebook. That sources of information has not been shut down. Don't know how good those sources of information or how much good that they can do, but they are available to them too.
Thanks, Yuli. I know this is really tough to talk about, but I also know you want people to kind of understand what's happening there.
That's
and
right.
The news is so confusing, and I know there are so many people in America, especially your Ukrainian community, that want to help. And we want to help all of you. And so we'll be posting some links and some information about how to do that. In the meantime, we'll be praying for you and your family and hope that everyone gets to a safe place and that this stops soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.